Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Sydney Zaruba, also known as the Boho Traveller. Today I am bringing you along on my England, Scotland, and Wales road trip travel vlog. In October of 2022, my partner and I went on a road trip which started in the southwest of England in Devon and then took us into Wales. From Wales, we went back into England for a little bit into the Lake District, and then we carried on our road trip on and into Scotland. Once in Scotland, we drove all the way up to the Orkney Islands and also drove quite a bit of the NC500, or the North Coast 500 for those of you unfamiliar with it. I am super excited to take you with us via this vlog on our road trip around the UK. Before we get into it, I wanted to remind you that if you need any help planning your upcoming trip, I am a travel advisor specialized in the curation of bespoke, unique itineraries for my clients. You can find my inquiry form in the video description below, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. The first part of our UK road trip adventure started with us leaving Devon, where my boyfriend is from, and heading into the quaint city of Bath. Bath is known for, well, you probably guessed it, baths. The Romans built a great bath hall here, and it is still something that you can visit today. Bath is also very much so associated with Jane Austen, as she spent a large portion of her life here, and the new Netflix adaptation of her novel will be set in Bath. There are heaps of amazing things to do during a trip to Bath, including visiting the Roman baths, visiting the William Pitt House, and hanging out by the Weir. There are lots of good food and brasseries in Bath, and it is a great wedding destination. After our all too brief time in this cute little city, it was time for our road trip to take us into Wales. The border road of Wales and England is littered with castle ruins and beautiful scenery. The drive itself is stunning, but be sure to stop along the way. Our first stop was at Stokesay Castle, just a little ways into Wales, and it honestly looks like something out of a fairy tale. The inside is riddled with history, and it is a part of the National Trust of England, Scotland, and Wales, so if you have your historic sites pass, it counts for your entry. I highly recommend taking the audio tour of the castle to learn about those who lived there and what each room's purpose served. After our trips to Stokesay, we carried on and did a bit of nature walking, where we accidentally came upon Dolbadarn Castle. The Dolbadarn Castle ruins were stunning and a bit of a random surprise for us. Snowdonia National Park is an adventure lover's dream come true in Wales, so if you want some adventure while you're in this cute little country, I suggest you stop there. After we were in Wales, we crossed back into England and stayed in the Lake District just for a night, and I had possibly the worst fish and chips of my life. But the hotel was lovely and the views were beautiful. We arrived late, so we didn't get much footage of any of this. We visited Era Forest Park, which had some stunning trees and trickling waterfalls. The air just feels cleaner in this part of the country. The next day, it was time for us to finally drive into Scotland. We started off departing the Lake District bound for Glencoe, where we stayed in the most amazing luxury wee glamping pods. They had a hot tub, and these pods may have been small, but they were mighty. A super comfy stay, our tiny cabins were kitted out with Bluetooth surround sound, synced with mood lighting, a fire pit, and of course, a hot tub. In the morning, the staff dropped off little picnic baskets of continental breakfast for us to enjoy from the privacy of our patio overlooking a river in Glencoe. Glencoe is a wonderful gateway into the Highlands with quick access to Inverness, Oban, the Isle of Skye, and the national parks. In Scotland, there is a right to roam, meaning you can walk anywhere at any time, as well as lay camp reasonably anywhere, something that's very rare to find in this day and age. After a lovely dinner at a nearby inn and an off-the-books whiskey tasting with the innkeeper, we were done for the night. We unfortunately only stayed in our wee little pod one night, but it was a memory that's going to carry with us forever. In the morning, it was time to carry on and say goodbye to our wee luxury glamping pod. Both of us have been to the lower Highlands and around Inverness before, so we just made one quick stop at Loch Ness to say hi to our favorite loch monster and, of course, to fly the drone. This castle that you can see here is the ruins of Urquhart Castle. Urquhart Castle was a stronghold for the Protestants during the Jacobite Rebellion, and it last saw action during this time. When the Protestants left, they blew up the castle so the Jacobites could not use it later on. And that is why we see it in ruins today. For those of you who don't know what the Jacobite Rebellion is, I'll give you a quick history sum up. Basically, in the early to mid 1700s, the Scottish were sick and tired of the British running over them and using all their resources and basically telling them how to live their lives. On top of that, the Scottish saw the current king sitting on the English throne as a phony and wanted to restore a Catholic king, a Stuart, to the throne, as should have been with the rightful line of succession. History and Protestant England had other plans, though. They removed Prince Charles Stuart from the throne and placed a Hanover on the throne, something that greatly irritated the Scots and led to not one, but two rebellions to reinstate a Stuart king on the throne. You may have heard of Bonnie Prince Charlie. That's the guy they were trying to put back in charge. After we visited Urquhart, we then drove to Inverness for a bite to eat. This is where our NC500 tour unofficially started, even though we didn't realize it at the time. Since both of us had been to Inverness before, we didn't stay more than an hour or so, just enough time to grab a quick pint and to warm up our bones with some food. After that, we went to Culloden Moor, the famous battlefield known for the death of the second and final Jacobite Rebellion. This was the battle that essentially saw the dismantling of the Highland clans as they were known, and where nearly 2,000 Highlanders lost their lives fighting for their freedom against the Brits and fighting to put Prince Charles back on the throne. If you're obsessed with Scotland and haven't yet watched Outlander, I suggest you go to your Netflix account right now and start watching. Seriously, get off this video. I don't know what you're doing. Go watch Outlander. Season 1's climax pivots around this location and event, but I'm not going to spoil the outcome for you. After Inverness and Culloden, we made the race to the far north of the country to go to our tiny little cottage in Thurso. It's only a wee bit windy out here on Dunnet today. So we're at the northernmost point of England, and it is really sunny. We bypassed Wick via a back road, shaving off a few miles on our drive, but we ended up making that drive the following day to explore, which is more of the North Coast 500. Thurso is one of the most northern cities on mainland UK and is the jumping off point to head to the Faroe, Shetland, and Orkney Islands by boat. It is complete wilderness up here. And while Thurso has a quaint little city center with bakeries and a butcher, life up here feels distinctly more Scandinavian than Scottish, with the landscape to match it. Hidden in the local flag here is the Norwegian flag, a tribute to the close ties this area had with the Vikings. After flouncing about Thurso for a few days, we made the whim decision to take the ferry to Orkney. In a night before the purchase, we decided to take the ferry from Scrabster, a little port which is just outside of Thurso. We brought our car with us, and at first we were a little put off, as the town of Stromness seemed completely empty. We couldn't find anywhere even to get a quick bite to eat, and we were famished. But after a few hours, we found what may have possibly been the best pub ever. From the outside, you couldn't hear anything, and it looked like all the lights were off. And even after walking in the front door, the front part of the pub was quiet. Maybe one guy sat on a bar stool. But we heard something and ventured a bit further into the back room, and this is what we found. The next day, with only slightly aching heads, we drove around the island past Scapa Flow and some truly stunning beaches. The scenery alone is enough to bring you to Orkney. But what Orkney is really known for are its Neolithic ruins. The most famous of these ruins is Skara Brae, a 5,000-year-old Neolithic village that was found by a farmer after a huge gale blew the sod off of his land to reveal one of the homes. There are countless passage tombs and chamber cairns on the island, as well as 2 incredible sets of standing stones. The Ring of Brodgar being one, and the Standing Stones of Stenness being the other. And unlike their famous counterparts, Stonehenge, you are allowed to walk right up to these stones without the mass hordes of crowds blocking you out and the line and tape and all of that stuff. It's amazing, and it truly was a spiritual experience to stand in front of these stones. Once we left Orkney, and rather reluctantly, I should say, we decided we should start winding down our trip with the NC500. While we only did a portion of the drive, we ended up doing much more than we originally planned. And I have to say, we did an epic bit of extra driving, leaving to go to the Isle of Skye. So today we are driving the North Coast 500, so we're heading from west to east, and the scenery is really, really stunning. And we're lucky because we got a little bit of sunshine, and it's just a really, really lovely day out here in Scotland, in northern Scotland. There's a reason that people are flocking to do the NC500. It is truly amazing scenery. October was a great time to go as the roads were not busy at all, but accommodation along the route even then was full. Everywhere we drove, we saw signs that said no vacancy, and many inns will only take travelers for lunch if they're staying there or had prior arrangements. This could have been a COVID thing, but I think it was more a busyness thing. Don't let this put you off, though, as the drive is well worth it. It just may require some advanced planning, especially if you want to travel during the summer. If you're interested in planning a trip to Scotland, I am a travel advisor and would love to help you. I create custom bespoke itineraries that give you a trip as unique as you are. You can find my inquiry form at the link in the description of this video. So, what is the NC500, you might be asking? I've talked about it a lot, but what exactly is it? The NC500, or the North Coast 500, is a stretch of 516 miles along Scotland's northernmost roads that take you to some of the most scenic and remote places in the country. The winding road is mostly 2 lanes and starts and ends in Inverness, but sometimes drops down to a single lane in the more quaint parts. Camper vans can't always access those roads. One of our stops on the NC500 was Smoo Cave, an epic deep cliff cave that has an underwater waterfall. You can see how many people are here in the middle of the week at the end of October during the pandemic, so you can imagine what mid-July post-pandemic looks like. After Smoo Cave, we carried on to Ullapool, a quaint town, for a bite to eat. Further on down the road, we found another remarkable castle ruin. Are you noticing a trend with this trip yet? And we had to stop for a wander. We also, of course, stopped for Eilean Donan Castle, and then it was time to explore the Isle of Skye. We arrived into Skye in the evening and had a wonderful dinner and breakfast at the Broadford Hotel. I actually accidentally left my phone there, and they even called me saying I had to come and get it, which was very kind of them for not just stealing my phone. Much appreciated. We couldn't explore Skye long because I was flying out of London in 3 days and needed to get south. But this worked in our favor as the weather was quite dreary and we had a car tour, and it was the only thing acceptable as all the hikes would have been excessively muddy and unpleasant. I've done Skye before. You can see that vlog here somewhere. It's linked. But Will had never been before, so this was a good little quick introductory tour for him. Now, you can call me crazy, but one thing that has been on my bucket list forever was to go and see the White Cliffs of Dover, which, if you don't know where those are, they're in the southeast of England. And I was determined to see them before I got on my flight to the US out of London. So, being the crazy people we are, we drove from Skye to Dover, complete opposite ends of the country, in one day. There were lots of Costa Coffee and Starbucks stops, as well as an overnight in Carlisle at a Premier Inn, my first and hopefully only time at a Premier Inn. The final stretch was totally worth it though, as we made it to the Cliffs of Dover just after sunset once everybody had left the park, and we were greeted with the most brilliant rise of the full moon over the cliffs. It was such a special moment, and one that I will cherish forever, and the perfect way to end our UK road trip. Thank you guys so much for walking along. Whoa. Thank you guys so much for watching along. If you've liked this video or found it useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe. If you want to find me elsewhere, you can find me on Instagram at Sydney_Zaruba. That's at Sydney, like the city in Australia, _Zaruba, like the country Aruba with a Z in front of it. If you need help planning your next trip, you can send an inquiry to Sydney@exploratourtravel.com. That's Sydney, SYDNEY, at EXPLORATEUR travel.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.